At a family meeting, my parents demanded I give them $80,000 for parenting services, saying I should pay them back. They even charged me for my brother's failures. So I hired a lawyer, filed, and watched their entitled smiles fade when the judge called it theft. Hey, Reddit! My family always treated me like the built-in responsible one while my brother got handed everything. I figured whatever, I'll build my own life and keep my distance. Turns out, they weren't done squeezing me yet. Before all that mess hit the fan, let me take you back to where it started. My name's Nate, I'm 31, and I run a small tech repair shop. People come to me with broken stuff because I'm dependable. Funny enough, that's the exact role I grew up playing in my family. If I had to describe my relationship with my parents, Harold and Denise, the simplest word is transactional. Not dramatic, not chaotic, just a constant sense that everything had a price tag attached. Nothing in that house was ever free. If I wanted anything, shoes, school supplies, even a ride somewhere, I had to earn it or explain why I deserved it. Not in a teach your kid responsibility way, but in a prove you're worth the cost kind of way. After enough lectures, I learned to stop asking. A request wasn't just a request. It was the start of a debate where I had to present my case like a lawyer. My younger brother, Kyle, did not live in the same world I did. He had it easy from the start. If he said he needed something, that was enough. Harold would hand him money before he even finished the sentence. Denise always had a reason why Kyle got exceptions. He's younger. He needs support. He's sensitive. He's going through a phase. Meanwhile, anytime I asked for something, the question was, what did you do to earn it? The difference showed up in every part of our lives. When I wanted new sneakers as a kid, I had to save birthday money, or get perfect grades, or help around the house for a month straight. When Kyle wanted sneakers, Denise got them the same day because he needed them for school. If I asked why Kyle could get stuff instantly, the explanation was always some version of, you're responsible. You can wait. For a long time, I convinced myself this was just them pushing me to be independent. I actually liked being able to handle things on my own, so it was easy to lie to myself about what was really happening. But the truth was simpler. The expectations were never equal. Kyle got support by default. I got told to prove myself before anyone even listened. The moment everything clicked for me happened around my 16th birthday. I'd been working part-time at a warehouse after school and saving every dollar I could for a car. I already knew Harold and Denise weren't going to buy me one, but I figured maybe, just maybe, they'd help with a little bit, or meet me halfway. Even a few hundred would have made a difference. A week before my birthday, Kyle turned 14. They surprised him with a brand new gaming console, the exact model people were lining up for at the time. I remember standing there while he tore the box open, everyone laughing, Kyle shouting about how awesome it was. And I felt weird. Not jealous exactly, more like confused. They had never spent that much money on me for anything. Not once. Harold must have noticed the look on my face because he said, kind of casually, we'll think about getting you a car in a couple years. Once you've shown you can handle the responsibility. A couple years. After I'd already been working, saving, and handling everything myself. That was when something inside me settled in a way I can still feel. I wasn't getting a car from them. Not then, not later. And it wasn't about responsibility. It was about who they saw as worth investing in. Kyle got support automatically. I got promises for some distant future that would never come. I didn't say anything out loud. I just nodded like I understood. But that was the day I stopped expecting real help from Harold and Denise. I kept saving and started planning my future around the idea that I'd always be handling things alone. By the time I moved out, I had already started distancing myself emotionally. It felt easier than waiting for support that was never going to arrive. By the time I turned 17, I had saved enough from my warehouse job to buy a used car. It wasn't great. Rust on the door, weird noise when turning, but it started each morning, and that was all I cared about. I bought it myself, signed the papers alone, and drove home feeling proud in a way I never felt growing up. Nobody helped me. Nobody contributed a dollar. And honestly, I didn't expect them to. After high school, I went straight into a mix of part-time jobs and community college, because that was what I could afford. I transferred to a university later, but still worked nearly full-time. Anytime tuition went up, I picked up extra shifts. When rent increased, I found a smaller place. My entire early adulthood was built on adjusting to problems without asking anyone for help, because asking Harold or Denise only guaranteed a lecture about choices or a reminder that I should have planned better. I moved out at 19 and kept my distance. They didn't offer support when I left, and I didn't ask. It felt like continuing the same pattern from childhood. Handle it yourself, Don't expect backup. Don't complain. I wasn't bitter about it at the time. It just felt normal to solve my own problems. If anything, I felt relieved not having to justify every expense. Kyle's adulthood looked nothing like mine. He started college right after high school but dropped out less than a year later. Harold explained it to everyone as Kyle needing time to figure things out. Kyle tried a different program the next semester, but that one lasted only a few months. After that, he bounced between jobs. Retail for a few weeks, landscaping for a couple months, a warehouse for a short stretch. He quit constantly. Sometimes he'd say the job was too hard. Other times he blamed coworkers. Every time he quit, Harold and Denise stepped in immediately. They covered his rent, paid off credit cards he maxed out, bought him another used car when his first one died. The pattern was identical to when we were kids. Kyle got instant support with a ready-made explanation, and I got treated like someone who didn't need anything because I'd figure it out. It wasn't jealousy. It was more like watching a movie I'd already seen 100 times. Kyle would mess up, everyone would panic around him, and then he'd get a clean slate. Even when I was struggling, working 3 jobs at once, skipping meals because groceries were too expensive, it never crossed my mind to ask my parents for help. I knew exactly how that conversation would go. They'd either guilt me or turn it into another lesson about being responsible. So I stayed independent, mostly out of habit. Around my early 20s, there were a couple incidents that hinted at how deep the financial imbalance ran. The first was the mortgage scare. Harold and Denise called me one night sounding panicked. Their loan was behind, and they said they were weeks away from losing the house. I was barely stable myself, but I transferred a large amount immediately. Denise sent a long text afterward thanking me and promising they'd pay me back once things settled. I saved the message without really knowing why. They never mentioned repayment again. The second incident didn't make sense to me at the time. Denise mentioned once in passing that she had to shift some funds around from an old account I had as a kid. She said it was something they'd set up for me years ago, but they borrowed from it to help Kyle after he lost a job. I didn't think much of it then, partly because I was distracted with school and work, and partly because I didn't know details about that account. I assumed it probably had a couple $100 at most. I didn't realize until much later how big that account originally was. Everything stayed quiet until the text that started everything. One Sunday morning, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Harold. Family meeting Sunday at 3. Don't be late. There was no explanation, no context, nothing. I stared at it for a minute, wondering what they were gearing up for. Family meetings weren't normal for us. The last one I remembered was when Kyle got caught cheating on a math test in middle school. I wasn't anxious, just curious. People like Harold and Denise didn't call meetings unless they wanted something. So I showed up not because I expected anything good, but because I wanted to see what they were trying now. When I pulled into Harold and Denise's driveway, the house looked the same as always, but the air inside felt different, tight, like everyone had been sitting in silence waiting for me. Denise was at the kitchen table with a folder in front of her, and Harold stood beside her like he was guarding something important. Kyle was sprawled across the living room couch, scrolling on his phone, barely glancing up when I walked in. No greetings, no, how are you? Just tension. Sit, Harold said, pointing to the chair across from Denise. His tone made it sound like I was late to a meeting at a job I didn't have. I sat. Kyle stretched out his legs like this was entertaining for him. Denise took a slow breath, reached into the folder, and slid a paper across the table toward me. I expected something strange. I just didn't expect that. It was an invoice. A full, itemized invoice typed neatly, with categories and final totals, like something a contractor would hand you after redoing a kitchen. I scanned it, thinking maybe it was some kind of joke, but there were no jokes on the page. Room and board, household share, food and utilities attributed to Nate, transportation, fuel and maintenance, medical and dental premiums and copays attributed to Nate's school, and clothing expenses, miscellaneous household purchases attributed to Nate. Each line had a dollar amount attached, some rounded, some oddly specific. It looked like someone had spent days building it. At the bottom was the total. I blinked at it, then looked at them. You're serious? I asked. Harold crossed his arms. You're doing well for yourself. It's time you contribute back. We supported you for years. Supported me? I repeated. I paid my own way through everything from 17 onward. Denise jumped in fast. You still lived under our roof. She tapped the paper like that proved something. Food, clothes, everything. It all cost money. This is just acknowledging it. I looked down again, and that's when I saw it. Another line item near the middle. Family support expenses, including Kyle. I stared at it for a good 5 seconds. Then I looked up at them. What is this? You're billing me for Kyle now? Harold didn't even blink. Family support includes everyone. You're the successful one. You should help. I let out a short breath. You're charging me for his mistakes? His college dropouts? His broken cars? His rent you covered? Don't twist it, Denise snapped. It's about loyalty. Kyle needed help and we stepped in. It's normal for brothers to support each other. You've always been the stable one. Kyle finally chimed in without looking up from his phone. It's not a big deal. You can afford it. That one sentence told me everything I needed to know. He expected this. They'd talked about it with him, probably framed it like I was being selfish by not paying. I slid the invoice back toward them. I'm not paying you for raising me. That's not how parenting works. Harold sat down across from me, folding his hands like he was in a negotiation. We're not asking you for everything the sheet shows. We're asking for your share, a contribution. You're doing well. You own a business. You have savings. That doesn't mean you get to bill me, I said. You're acting like this is unreasonable, Denise said, shaking her head. We sacrificed a lot. You think raising a kid is free? It kind of is your job, I replied. Kids don't owe their parents money for existing. Harold leaned forward slightly. If you were struggling, we wouldn't ask. But you've always been fine. You never needed anything from us. You can help us now. I looked at him. You didn't offer help. That's why I never needed it. Kyle snorted. You're making this dramatic. I ignored him. Let me get this straight. You calculated a bill for raising me, added a section for Kyle's life decisions, and expect me to pay it because I have a job? Denise lifted her chin. Yes, because families support each other. Funny, I said, how that only goes one direction. Harold's tone sharpened. This attitude isn't going to get you anywhere. You can't act like you're above the family. I'm not acting like anything, I said. I'm saying I'm not paying this. You will, he said confidently. We know you. You're responsible. You won't leave your family hanging. That word, responsible, was the same one they used to excuse everything with Kyle. Same script, different year. I'm not paying, I repeated. The room stiffened instantly. Denise's expression tightened. Harold straightened like he was preparing for a fight he thought he was going to win. Kyle finally looked up from his phone with an annoyed sigh. You're unbelievable, Denise said, her voice sharp. You're being selfish, Kyle added. Harold's voice dropped. This is the problem with you. You think you're better than everyone because you worked a few jobs and bought a car? I stood. I think it's insane to send your kid a bill for raising him. And adding charges for his brother? Honestly, I don't even have a word for it. Harold slapped his hand on the table. Not hard, but enough to show he was losing patience. Sit back down. We're not done. We are, I said. I'm not paying. Not a dollar. The second those words left my mouth, the whole room shifted. Denise looked offended like I had insulted her personally. Harold's jaw hardened. Kyle rolled his eyes. The temperature in the room didn't literally change, but it felt like it had. And that was the moment everything truly began to fall apart. Harold was still mid-lecture about responsibility when I pulled out my phone. I didn't raise my voice or slam anything down. I just opened the Notes app and scrolled to a list I had kept for years. It wasn't something I planned to ever use. It started as a way for me to keep track of what I'd given them, because the amounts weren't small, and I didn't want to forget. That was it. I turned the screen toward them. You want to talk about support? Here. Denise leaned forward first. The color drained from her face almost immediately. She looked like she wanted to deny it, but couldn't even manage the first word. The list was simple. The large mortgage transfer they begged for a couple of smaller transfers afterward, the temporary help. I sent during another one of Kyle's resets the savings they pulled from, without asking the inheritance line I only learned about later. The total wasn't vague or exaggerated. It was right there in front of them. Harold barely glanced at it before waving a hand. That's different. I didn't look away. How? It just is, he said. You were doing fine. You had steady work. You weren't struggling. So because I was stable, I said, it means the money didn't count? Denise straightened like she finally found footing. We used that money for the family. Do you understand that? It wasn't for us. It was for keeping the house, for keeping things together. Things together, I asked. You took money out of an account that was mine and didn't even tell me it existed. You used that to cover Kyle. Then you tell me I owe you more? Kyle groaned. You're making this dramatic. I turned toward him. It's literally a list of what you got that I paid for. You're older, he shot back. You always had it figured out. That's not an excuse, I said. Harold cut in before Kyle could answer. Look, we're not going backwards. What we took was necessary. What we're asking from you now is fairness. Fairness, I repeated. You have a business, he said. You have savings. We know you do. So yes, give something back, contribute. So in your eyes, I said, my success means I owe you financially forever. That's not what we said, Denise snapped. It's exactly what you're saying, I replied. You wrote a bill. You added a line for Kyle. You're charging me for helping him. Because he needs it, Denise said. Harold nodded. And you don't. There it was, spoken plainly. Their whole mindset wrapped into one sentence. I put my phone down. I'm not paying you. For anything. Harold's lips thinned. Fine. If you won't pay, don't expect anything from us later. He said it with that deliberate tone, the kind meant to scare someone into backing down. It didn't take a genius to figure out what he meant. The later wasn't subtle. I let out a short laugh. I already know I'm not getting anything later. Kyle will. You'll find a way to justify that too. Kyle didn't even deny it. He just rolled his eyes like I was stating the obvious. Denise looked offended. You think we'd cut you out like that? You already did, I said. Just not on paper. Harold stood up slowly, trying to tower the conversation. If you walk out of this house right now, you're choosing to separate yourself from this family. Remember that. It wasn't a warning. It was a final attempt at leverage. The same pattern I'd known since childhood. Do what they want or lose your place. Agree, or you're the problem. The only difference was that now I wasn't 16, and I didn't care about their approval. I'm done, I said. Denise's voice broke into anger. You're really going to leave like this? You asked for money to raise me, I said. I think I'm allowed to leave. Harold moved closer like he expected to intimidate me into sitting back down. If you step out that door, I'm still not paying you, I said, picking up my keys. The room snapped. Kyle muttered something under his breath. Denise looked like I'd betrayed her personally. Harold stared at me like he was trying to figure out how he lost control so quickly. I walked out anyway. No yelling, no door slam, just a quiet exit. When I sat in my car, the silence felt heavier than the argument. Not emotional, more like clarity. The invoice wasn't a mistake or a huge misunderstanding. It was who they were, who they'd always been. And for the first time, I realized they wouldn't stop unless something forced them to. Kyle showed up at my apartment 3 days after the invoice fight. No warning. I opened the door, and he was standing there with this forced, calm expression, like he had practiced it in the car. He held a coffee he probably bought just to look casual. Can we talk? He asked. I stepped aside and let him in. He sat down on my couch like he owned the place, glancing around like he was checking whether I'd made it enough to justify the invoice they handed me. He started with a sigh, the kind people use when they want to sound patient. Mom and Dad are really hurt, man. They didn't expect you to blow up like that. I didn't blow up, I said. I said no. Same thing, he replied. They feel like you're shutting them out. I didn't answer. Kyle looked at me the way someone tries to look at a child they think they're smarter than. He leaned forward. Look, they're not asking you for everything. Just meet halfway. There it was. The real reason he came. Halfway with what? I asked, even though I already knew. You know, he said, shrugging. Pay something. It doesn't have to be the whole thing. Just show them you care. And drop the inheritance stuff. That made them really upset. I stared at him. I didn't bring up the inheritance. They did. He froze just a little, like he hadn't expected me to say that out loud. Well, they said you questioned it. That's not what happened, I said. And you know it. Kyle rubbed his face, annoyed. Then he slipped. They're trying, okay? And if you helped out a bit, they said they'd take care of me too. We'd all benefit. I raised an eyebrow. They promised you something? He realized immediately what he'd just admitted. His face tightened. Not like that, he said quickly. Just support. You know, helping me get stable. Stable, I repeated. Like the newer car they bought you last week? He blinked hard. How did you? Cousin Terry, I said. She said Denise was bragging at a family lunch. Kyle looked away. He didn't deny it. They hadn't even tried to hide it. The timing was obvious. They didn't get their way with me, so Kyle got rewarded. A small, petty punishment disguised as helping their sensitive son. I wasn't angry, just done. It confirmed everything I already knew. Kyle stood up. You're being stubborn. You could fix this. Just pay something, and we can all move on. I opened the door. We're not having this conversation again. He muttered something under his breath as he walked out, but I didn't bother asking what. I'd heard enough from him for the year. After he left, I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. Not out of spite, out of necessity. If they were willing to go that far over an invoice, then there was more under the surface. I started by pulling up old bank records. I went line by line. There was the large mortgage transfer. There was the smaller emergency transfer. Then, Denise's text promising they'd pay me back. She even added a heart emoji at the end. Like that made it official. Scrolling back years, I found something odd. A withdrawal I didn't recognize, labeled from an account I didn't know existed. It hit me. This must have been the old account Denise mentioned once in passing. I checked the account number and traced it backward. It wasn't a checking or savings account I had ever used. I expanded the details, and that's when I figured it out. It was a custodial account, opened when I was a kid. In my name. Zero balance. Every cent had been drained around the same time the inheritance from Grandpa disappeared. This wasn't one event. It was two separate money grabs. Separate timings, separate reasons, same pattern. They hadn't just taken the inheritance. They'd emptied an account that was supposed to be mine long before that. I leaned back, not shocked anymore, just tired of pretending it was all misunderstandings or accidents. There was only one person who could confirm the inheritance part properly. Uncle Victor, my mom's older brother and the executor of Grandpa's estate. I called him. He picked up with a cautious hello, like he'd been waiting for the call. Victor, I said, I need to ask you something about Grandpa's will. He sighed immediately, like he already knew where this was going. I wondered how long until you asked. So it's true? I said. He left something for me? Yes, Victor said. Equal shares for you and Kyle. That's how your grandfather wanted it. Denise told me you agreed to let them manage your share while you were in school. I closed my eyes for a second. I never agreed to anything. I figured, Victor said. But without you asking directly, I couldn't interfere. We talked for a few minutes. He confirmed every detail plainly. I was legally entitled to the money. I never signed a waiver. Nothing about the account or inheritance had ever been transferred with my permission. Victor, the executor, confirmed there was no written authority to manage my share. Harold and Denise had simply acted like it was theirs to use. Do you want to pursue it? Victor finally asked. Yes, I said. I'm done letting them take from me. When we hung up, I didn't sit there overthinking it. I pulled up the contact information for a lawyer a friend of mine had once recommended, Priya Shah, and scheduled a consultation. By the end of the day, I had emailed her every document, message, and record I found. I filed. Over the next few months, Priya worked the slow gears of the system. Filings, discovery requests, and subpoenas. Banks took their time. Some records dripped in weeks apart. Every new document tightened the picture, but the calendar kept stretching. When we first spoke, Priya's tone was steady, like she'd already sorted the whole situation into categories. You have a strong case, she said. Very strong. The paper trail is clear. The inheritance transfer, the custodial account, the mortgage money, none of it was authorized by you. Hearing it stated plainly made everything sharper. There was no room left to pretend any part of this was a misunderstanding. Within the first month, Harold and Denise, through their attorney, made it clear they intended to fight. No negotiation, no apology, just a firm reply and a promise to contest everything. It didn't take long for the social side of things to start. After subpoenas cleared and the first production came in, Priya started stitching a timeline. More records followed in batches, statements, transfers, and account notes that only made sense side by side. One night, out of nowhere, I got added to a huge family group chat I hadn't been in since I was a teenager. The second I clicked in, messages were already flooding the feed. Why are you going after your parents? Your mom is devastated. Yeah, this isn't how family handles disagreements. Harold and Denise had clearly told their version first. One where I was greedy, ungrateful, and attacking them without reason. They made it sound like I had randomly decided to sue them for attention or spite. I waited for the chat to slow down, then sent one calm message. Here is my summary. Here are the documents. Here's the timeline. You can decide for yourselves. I added screenshots, the mortgage transfer receipt, the custodial account info, the inheritance paperwork Uncle Victor confirmed, Denise's old promises to repay. Nothing dramatic, no insults, just facts. That should have settled things. But Harold jumped in immediately. He posted cropped screenshots of our last argument, only the parts where I said, I'm done and I'm not paying you. He cut out everything leading to those lines. Then he added a paragraph claiming I always resented the family and was twisting old memories to get money. And then my phone pinged with a private message. Cousin Marla. Hey, just so you know, a lot of us saw how they treated you when we were kids. I'm not surprised. I thanked her. She didn't take sides publicly, but she didn't buy Harold and Denise's story either. Small thing, but it helped cut through the noise. A day later, Uncle Victor called me. He sounded exhausted. They've called me every night this week, he said, asking why I'm helping you ruin the family. They know you're telling the truth, I said. That's why they're panicking, he replied. They tried to convince me to reconsider my statement. Then they tried guilt, then anger. Your mother told me I was betraying her. Hearing it secondhand was almost more draining than hearing it myself. But Victor stayed steady. I'm not backing down, he said. Your grandfather made his wishes clear. I'm not letting them rewrite his intentions just because they're embarrassed. I believed him. But the pressure he was under showed how messy this was getting behind the scenes. A few mornings later, I opened my apartment door to grab a package and found Denise standing there. No warning again. Just her on the landing, wringing her hands. She looked small in a way I wasn't used to. Nate, she said, already crying. I just want my son back. She reached for me like she wanted a hug. I didn't move. She stepped back but kept crying. This lawsuit is destroying us, she said. We never thought you'd go this far. Please just talk to us. Drop this whole thing. I can't drop it, I said. You took money that wasn't yours. She drew in a long breath. The sobbing throttled down. Her face set, and the softness left her eyes. So that's it, she said, sharper now. You're choosing money over your own parents? You sent me a bill for raising me, I said. That was your father's idea, she snapped. And if you weren't so stubborn, none of this would be happening. And 5 seconds earlier, she'd been begging. Now she was scolding. Whiplash didn't even begin to describe it. She pointed at me like I was a teenager again. Think carefully about what you're doing. Families don't turn on each other over finances. You're pushing us to a point where we have to protect ourselves. I didn't take the bait. I told her I needed her to leave. She walked down the stairs muttering that I was going to regret this. Later that month, Priya emailed me an alert from the county docket. Harold and Denise had filed a small claims harassment claim, a countersuit meant to create a paper trail. It wasn't substantive, but it required a formal response, and the court consolidated their filing with my case. It was obvious now, they weren't trying to resolve anything. They were preparing to fight dirtier. My phone kept buzzing from the family chat. I muted the thread. The court eventually set a hearing date several months out. Harold and Denise weren't backing down. Kyle was fully on their side. The family was divided, and the accusations were already flying. By the end of that week, it was clear. We were past the point of talking. There was no repairing this. The only thing left was the courtroom. When the court date finally arrived, months later, the courtroom was smaller than I expected. No dramatic lighting, no echoing speeches, just a judge who looked like she'd seen every kind of family mess and had zero patience left for any of it. Harold and Denise sat at their table stiffly, as if they were the victims of some giant misunderstanding. Kyle sat with them, avoiding eye contact with me completely. Priya leaned over and whispered, "They're going to lie. Stay calm and let the documents do the work." She was right. From the moment the hearing began, Harold and Denise spoke like they had rehearsed every line. Harold claimed the money I gave them was voluntary support. Denise said I always wanted them to manage things, because I was too busy to deal with financial stuff. They said the invoice was just a conversation starter, not a demand. They framed the custodial account as something they assumed Nate no longer cared about. They spoke with confidence, like this was all reasonable. Kyle took the stand and repeated their script almost word for word. He said I had always been distant and resentful. He said I was attacking the family because of old grudges. Hearing my own brother say it so easily didn't surprise me, but it confirmed how far this had gone. Priya didn't react. She took notes, waited, and when it was her turn, she started laying everything out cleanly. First the mortgage transfer, then the savings withdrawals, then the custodial account activity, then the inheritance papers. She put each item on a screen for the judge to see. There was no commentary, just timestamps, amounts, and official forms. She showed Denise's old promise to repay the mortgage money. She showed the custodial account logs that matched the same period the inheritance vanished. She pulled up the estate paperwork Victor had scanned for us, documents proving that Grandpa left equal shares for Kyle and me. The judge's expression didn't change much, but the room felt different once the facts were up there. The confidence Harold and Denise had walked in with started fading. Then came the big part, discovery. Priya stood, flipped to a new binder, and explained what we had found. She presented a timeline showing how the inheritance moved through several accounts in short intervals. She pointed out that some of the money was funneled temporarily into an account under Kyle's name. She showed how Harold listed portions of the money as house repairs, even though the bank statements showed payments made to unrelated vendors, online marketplaces, and transfers marked as miscellaneous family support. The judge leaned forward. "Are you suggesting the defendants attempted to conceal assets?" she asked. Priya answered plainly. "Not suggesting, Your Honor. Showing." She highlighted one particularly messy transfer, money labeled as roof repair that went to a personal credit card with a balance matching purchases made in the same month. The judge's eyebrows lifted a fraction. For her, that was the equivalent of shouting. Harold tried to interrupt, claiming they were organizing funds, but the judge cut him off. Do not speak unless addressed. It was the first time Harold looked genuinely rattled. Then came Uncle Victor. He testified with zero drama, just facts. He confirmed that Grandpa had left equal inheritance to both grandsons, Kyle and me. He confirmed that I never signed away any rights. He confirmed that Harold and Denise claimed I had verbally agreed to let them manage my portion, but that no such agreement had ever been recorded or supported by any document. Victor finished by saying, "My brother-in-law and sister misrepresented Nate's intentions. The inheritance was never theirs to spend." The judge nodded slowly. She didn't look at Harold or Denise right away. She just tapped her pen on the edge of the desk like she was deciding how deep the consequences would go. When closing statements finished, she asked one question. "Mr. and Mrs. Langford, did you ever once ask your son for written consent to manage his inheritance or his custodial account?" Harold opened his mouth. No words came out. Denise finally said, "We didn't think we needed permission. We're his parents." The judge exhaled sharply. That is not how financial guardianship works. And that was it, the last nail. The judge took the matter under advisement. A few weeks later, the written decision landed. Harold and Denise were ordered to repay the full inheritance portion allocated to me, all taken funds from the custodial account, and the documented loans I had provided during the mortgage crisis. No settlement, no family agreement, just a legal judgment. When the judge finished, Harold and Denise stared straight ahead like they couldn't process what had happened. Kyle looked at them first, then at me, like he wanted to say something, but couldn't figure out what would still be in his parents' favor. In the end, he just stood and walked out after them. Outside the courtroom, Harold wouldn't look at me. Denise did, but only long enough to say, "We didn't deserve this," before turning away. Kyle didn't speak to me at all. Not then. Not in the weeks after. He blocked my number. Harold and Denise told relatives I had destroyed the family for money. Some believed them. Some went quiet. Others, like Marla, eventually messaged me saying the evidence had changed their view. The split didn't surprise me anymore. What surprised me was how I felt when the dust settled. It wasn't relief. It wasn't victory. It was more like finally stepping out of a house where the walls had been leaning inward for years. I wasn't happy, but I wasn't trapped. That was enough. The truth was simple. Harold and Denise were never going to change. They weren't going to apologize. They weren't going to accept responsibility. If I hadn't taken legal action, they would have kept pulling from me until there was nothing left. So now I'm here, telling this story the same way I lived it, directly. And I keep wondering, was this too extreme? Or was it the only way to stop being used? If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.